13th, 2019. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Zachary Urban,
Present.
Janice Hoppy,
Present.
George Pond,
Present.
David Keeter,
Present.
Christy Davis,
Here.
Larry Matthews,
Here.
Leah Dozeman,
Here.
Amanda Weaver.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We have several proclamations and ceremonies, so I'm going to go to the podium now. Is David Goff here? David, come forward, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's my pleasure to make a proclamation about Mental Health Month, May 2019. Whereas good mental health is essential to the overall health and emotional well-being of all children, youth, adults, and families, and promotes a healthy community. And whereas 1 in 5 people in our communities experience a mental health condition each year. And whereas 8.1% of individuals in our communities experience substance use disorder each year. And whereas increased focus on the prevention of mental health conditions and substance abuse disorders among children and adolescents through screening and early intervention helps improve lives. And whereas the stigma against mental health conditions and substance use disorders prevents many people from accessing care, and whereas mental health problems and substance abuse disorders are detected early and treated, people can recover and maintain a healthy and independent life. And whereas the city of Wheat Ridge is dedicated to improving the health and well-being of its citizens by ending stigma and focusing on the integrated role of mental health in all our lives. Therefore now, I, Bud Starker, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, do hereby proclaim May 2019 as Mental Health Month and call upon all citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our communities and resources to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, providing appropriate and accessible services for all citizens, and making mental health a priority. Dated this 13th day of May 2019, Bud Starker, Mayor. Would you like to say a few things?
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you for the introduction. I am David Goff, Chief Financial Officer for Jefferson Center for Mental Health. On behalf of the board, staff, and clients of Jefferson Center, thank you for issuing this proclamation and recognizing May as Mental Health Month in the city of Wheat Ridge. At Jefferson Center, through our broad array of services and programs, we offer hope and support to people of all ages who are struggling with some of the life's most difficult challenges. Last year alone, we touched the lives of more than 32,000 people. We could not do this without the support of our community partners, so thank you. You know, 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health or substance abuse disorder over the course of their lives. Behavioral health disorders are more common than cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Without treatment, these disorders can affect a person's ability to hold a job, care for a family, or have hope that things will get better. Yet, less than half of the people with a diagnosable mental illness will seek treatment, either because of the stigma associated with mental illness or because they don't know where to turn. That is why your support of Mental Health Month is so important. Together, we will increase awareness and reduce the stigma associated with mental health and substance use disorders. When the stigma fades, more people will seek care, and our community will become stronger and healthier. Jefferson Center truly values the support of the city of Wheat Ridge. Thank you again for recognizing Mental Health Month and for supporting Jefferson Center. We couldn't do all this work without you.
I could have Jeff Gomez join us up here and Leah Dozeman. There he is. Hey. How are you? So I have a proclamation in appreciation of Jeff Gomez. Whereas the mayor and city council of the city of Wheat Ridge desired to formally express appreciation to Jeff Gomez in celebration of outstanding service and extraordinary achievements as an educator and principal of Jefferson County Schools. And whereas Mr. Gomez has been a devoted educator in Wheat Ridge schools for the past 31 years, including Stevens Elementary School, 1988 through 1995, teaching grades 5 and 6, principal at Pennington Elementary School from 1998 through 2000, Wilmore Davis Elementary from 2001 through 2011, and Everett Middle School from 2011 through 2019. And whereas Mr. Gomez has continued to cultivate a great environment for both learning and teaching and forged positive and supportive relations with community members and organizations to ensure all students receive the quality education they deserve. And whereas over the past 31 years, Mr. Gomez has served as an excellent example to colleagues, teachers, and administrators alike, inspiring them with all his tireless activity for the best interests of his students and future of Jefferson County Schools. And whereas upon Mr. Gomez's retirement, he can be proud of the impact he has made with students, parents, teachers, and alumni throughout our city. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on behalf of the City Council and the members of the City of Wheat Ridge, I, Bud Starker, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim appreciation to Jeff Gomez for his 31 years as an educator and principal at Jefferson County Schools in the City of Wheat Ridge and congratulate him on his retirement. And witness thereof on this 13th day of May, 2019, Bud Starker, Mayor. And I would also like to present Mr. Gomez with this plaque that says, recognition is hereby given to Jeff Gomez for 31 years of dedication, vision, and leadership at Jefferson County Schools. Congratulations on your retirement, and thank you from the Wheat Ridge community, Mayor and City Council, City of Wheat Ridge.
So before I hand the mic over to Jeff, I just want to present him with some of these notes from your students of their favorite memories of you over the years. Sorry if I get a little emotional. I had the honor and privilege of having Jeff Gomez as principal at Pennington Elementary, and he was by far my favorite principal at that school. And I have really appreciated his vision and leadership as I've gotten older and been able to work with him in the Wheat Ridge community. It takes a lot to be a teacher, and it takes a lot to be an educator for that length of a time. Jeff always shows up. He's always a great leader, very innovative, and he puts the fun in learning. And I just really appreciate you and everything that you've devoted to this community, and thank you for everything.
Just so you know, when I first started teaching at Everett actually Stevens Elementary, Dan Wilde was the mayor. I don't know if you guys know that name or not. His grandson Derek was in my class, and a couple of years later I had his daughter Rhea. But what I can tell you about finding a home in Wheat Ridge. When I started to teach, is that this is the only place I wanted to be in Jefferson County. I grew up across the border in North Denver before we became the Highlands, and I had amazing teachers, and they inspired me to also become a teacher. And as much as I like to feel I actually had influence on my families and my students, they actually had more influence on me. And Many of them are here tonight, and I want to thank you for that. John, thanks for representing us with Everett. My family in the back, colleagues. This is a great city. You guys already know that. You live here. And I just am lucky enough to be able to have been here as long as I have. And I appreciate everything you all do. And it's going to be hard leaving, but it's time to start something new. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Also, she was a spunky and sassy and intelligent and driven back in 3rd grade when I first met her, as she is today. So thank you, Leah, for growing up and being an amazing person. I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. We have, I'm going to make a proclamation for National Police Week. Division Chief Lorenz, would you please join me? This is a proclamation designating the week of May 12 through 18, 2019 as National Police Week and May 15, 2019 as National Police Officers Memorial Day. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as Police Week. And whereas the people of Colorado have shared in the grief of the tragic loss of Los Animas County Sheriff Sergeant Matthew Moreno, El Paso County Sheriff's Detective Micah Flick, and Adams County Sheriff Deputy Heath Gum. And whereas it is important to recognize and honor the sacrifice made by those who are injured and who die in the line of duty. And whereas the members of the City of Wheat Ridge Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of all who work, play, and live in our city. And whereas it is important that everyone know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of our police department, and that our local law enforcement agency recognizes their duty to serve our community by safeguarding life and property, by providing protection against violence and disorder, and by shielding the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression and intimidation. And whereas over the course of the past 50 years, the police department of the City of Wheat Ridge has grown to be a modern and scientific law enforcement agency which tirelessly provides a vital public service in partnership with the law-abiding members of our community. Now therefore, I, Bud Starker, call upon all those living and working in Wheat Ridge and upon all of our community's patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week May 12 through May 18, 2019 as National Police Week, honoring law enforcement officers, past and present, who, by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities, have tendered a dedicated service to our community, and in so doing have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all members of the community. I further call upon our community to observe May 15 as National Police Officers Memorial Day, to honor those police officers who, through their courageous deeds, have lost their lives or who have been injured in the performance of their duties. In witness thereof, on this 13th day of May, 2019, Bud Starker, Mayor.
Chief Brennan has had another grandson this afternoon, so he's off spending some family time, and I get to spend some good time here. We really appreciate the support of the mayor and council, and more important, the community. we appreciate your support, and we feel it all the time, so thanks for this.
Thank you. If I believe we got something from Dominic Breton, or okay, not sure who's doing all the talking. Hi. Oh, terrific. Well, come on up. There you are.
So we are all members of the Wheat Ridge Grange, and the Wheat Ridge Grange is a community-based organization. This year we had an annual chili cook-off, our 4th annual chili cook-off, to raise funds for the Feed the Future program, and we were able to raise $500, and so we wanted to present it tonight.
Our next order of business is the approval of the minutes. Councilors, you have in your packet the council minutes of February 11, 2019, and, March 11, 2019. Are there any modifications required to the minutes? Seeing none, they will stand as presented. Are there any modifications of the agenda or any item that anyone would wish to pull off of the consent agenda? Seeing none, we will move with the agenda that we have. We will move now to citizens' right to speak. We have a sign-up sheet that we're picking up now. This is the time in our meeting when citizens are invited to speak on any item, not an agenda item. So there are some items that are agenda items, and those are not for speaking about. But any item not on the agenda, you're free to come. I have a name of people who have signed up to speak, and I will call the speaker, and the person after the speaker is the on-deck speaker. When you come to the podium, if you would adjust the microphone so that it's comfortable to speak, and you may speak into it so we can capture your comments. If you would give us your first name and last name and spell your last name for the record, and then give us your address. And we have 3 minutes allotted for each speaker. We have the opportunity for 2 speakers to donate their time to a third speaker for a total of 9 minutes. If you wish to do that, please organize that before you come up, and the speaker that signed up come with. If you're going to donate your time, please come and tell us that you're donating your time to who you are. So hopefully that's pretty easy. We look forward to hearing from everyone. So our first speaker is Carol Matthews and Suzanne Capra on deck.
Carol Matthews, MATHEWS, 3851 Hoyt. I'm reading this off the city website, City Manager Form of Government. The City of Wheat Ridge functions with a city manager form of government. Wheat Ridge City Council has 8 members elected to represent the citizens of Wheat Ridge who are responsible for representing the citizens of Wheat Ridge, adopting ordinance and resolutions or rules of the city, determining city policies, securing and sustaining public improvements, such as street and sidewalks, superintending the expenditures of money, establishing property tax and fees, approving various city contracts, and designating members of the city boards, commissions, and committees. The council appoints a city manager to supervise the delivery of public services and implement public policy approved by the council. In the past few months, there have been several issues involving change of zoning, division of lots, flag houses, the baseball field, and high-density housing. Large numbers of citizens from the neighborhoods affected by these issues being considered by the city council have poured into the council chambers to speak on the topics and how they will affect the neighborhood and their property. There have been several negative comments from city councilmen about these angry mobs who wish to control the city's council's decisions. In about one case, this baseball field, the majority of council members have voted against the citizens' wishes. Those councilmen who have voted with the citizens have been treated badly and held in disregard by their fellow councilmen for their opposition vote. Need the city council members be reminded that by their job descriptions published on the city website, your job is to represent the citizens of Wheat Ridge? Isn't that what you promised to do when the voters voted for you? I cannot imagine that you would have been elected to city council if you would have said, "Citizens be damned. I will vote the way I want, and your interests and opinions do not count." Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Suzanne Capra, and I was remiss about not telling you we have a light, some lights on the podium. So the green light appears when the speaker commences. The green light will flash when you have 30 seconds remaining. The yellow light comes on with 15 seconds, and when the red light comes on, your time is over. So I'm sorry I didn't get that in earlier. So our next speaker is Suzanne Capra. Okay, thank you. Our next speaker then is Jerry DiTullio and Troy Cipher on deck. And Vivian Voss, I guess, has signed up to donate some time also.
Vivian Voss, VOS 6920 West 47th Place. I'm donating my 3 minutes to Jerry DiTullio.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Vivian.
DiTullio.
Thank you. Jerry DiTullio, City of Wheat Ridge resident. So I contemplated whether coming tonight because I've been sitting where you have been for 23 years, and it's a tough job. I understand that. And it's really nobody's fault in here that 2 council members resigned, and you appointed 2 new council members. You followed the process, and that was a good thing. The city charter is clear that it says everybody needs to vote. Everybody elected needs to vote unless they have a financial conflict of interest. And in the past, we've had planning commission members appointed to city council, and then they voted on quasi matters after the city attorney queried them, can they make an unbiased decision? And they did. That was Dean Goki. Currently, you have Council Member Davis. She sits on the Urban Renewal Authority and votes, and then she votes on urban renewal issues here. When I was on the Housing Authority, I voted on the Housing Authority, and then those issues were brought to council, and I voted then. Public policy is a tough job, and it got tougher when you had 2 members resign for various reasons. So, in my opinion, I'm not an attorney, and I've been doing this for 23 years, though, and I feel your pain, and I feel the public's pain. Amanda Weaver, Councilmember Amanda Weaver, and Dave Cuter did the right thing when they voted on all of those items, because whatever they heard, especially Amanda Weaver at the Planning Commission, you also have in your packets, and it's on TV. So any one of you, including the public, could watch Planning Commission and see exactly what happened. So it's not really an ex parte contact when you're sitting in your home watching the Planning Commission meeting. And I know for a fact that in the past, council members watched the Planning Commission. So whatever Ms. Weaver actually saw and heard, you got it in your packet, and you also got it on TV if you wanted to watch the meeting. So the charter is the #1 rule to follow. It's your constitution. It's our constitution. It says you will vote. Next down on the line is the code. And Chapter 26 talks about quasi-judicial. But in this case, charter trumps the code. And so you have to vote unless you have a financial conflict of interest. It was mentioned more than once that nobody on the dais had a financial conflict of interest. Lastly, you have your rules in your third hierarchical position, and the rules allows a reconsideration. And a reconsideration was brought up legally and ethically by one of the council members on the prevailing side. So what I'm saying here is that while public policy is messy and complicated, you're going through the process, and you can't just start using the rules to change things to fit your needs. What bothers me is that in the council rules, it also talks about impugning motives. And when I was that's actually enforced by the chair and by the parliamentarian. And what frustrates me is that when somebody makes a motion to reconsider or makes a motion that you disagree with, that you ask them, well, who bought and paid for that? Who paid you off? There's nobody in this room that's gotten paid off by anybody ever. And it frustrates me because I can actually hear it you can hear it on the TV. So I had 6 minutes. So the last thing I have is point of order. A point of order is when there's a procedural error, not when you disagree with somebody. And on a point of order on that procedural error, the chair, Mr. Starker, or the parliamentarian, Ms. Hoppy, can rule on that point of order quickly and efficiently, then you move on. But to sit and try to ask the city attorney the same question 5 times so you can get a different answer that you want is not really, in my opinion, good public policy. So the last thing I wanted to mention is that I'll be here on May 20th with Commissioner Ty to talk about the budget challenges of the county at our study session. But I wanted to thank Ms. Weaver for stepping up and volunteering and voting, Councilmember Dozeman for actually thinking about what happened, looking at the facts, and then making a motion to reconsider. It doesn't mean it's going to pass, doesn't mean it's going to work, but people are thinking. And I also want to thank all of you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Troy Cipher and Steve Prose on deck.
Hi guys, how you doing? Troy Cipher with Cipher Specialties in Wheat Ridge, 4509 Harlan Street. So I wanted to just bring it up. We're on the east end of Wheat Ridge, between Harlan 44th and 48th. It's getting I guess the traffic design along Harlan is getting very, very scary. And I've talked to numerous police officers about this and other people, but because of the Walmart design over in Lakeside, the amount of people driving the wrong way down the street and doing U-turns illegally is astronomical. So when they built the Walmart in Lakeside, I don't think anybody considered that there was a median in the middle and they had certain turning lanes that were used and not used. So people will go southbound on Harlan, go across the wrong side of the road to enter Walmart from the east or from the west side. And then now the people are going northbound on Harlan and they're trying to enter Planned Parenthood going the north way across the wrong side. And frankly, they're going down sidewalks too. So what happened is we just invested a significant amount of money in our building and redevelopment of our property, and we wanted to repave the front. We want to comply with the city around, with zoning around infrastructure and landscaping, things like that. But there's no possible way we can re-asphalt our lot or redo things in our lot with people doing U-turns at the rate of 5, 10, maybe 15 a day, and it just tears up the lot. So I know that Wheat Ridge is on the west side of Harlan and Lakeside's on the east side, and I think Jeffco owns the median, what I heard. Something's got to be done. And whether the median has to be reshaped or something, I need to ask you guys to look into this, put a study together, do something, but I can literally run video out there, and it's going to get really, really bad at some point, and I'm surprised there's not as many accidents. Besides, there's no crosswalks, and there's a lot of people that walk across that street too, and it becomes a racetrack. So that's all I have. I just want you guys to take a look at it, and maybe we can follow up on something, okay? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jack Prose and Dorothy Archer on deck.
My name is Steve Prose. Jack Prose was my dad.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. he's watching me right now. I live at 4290 Reed Street, Wheat Ridge, Colorado, and I yield my time to Judy Capra.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dorothy Archer and Judy Capra on deck.
My name is Dorothy Archer, A-R-C-H-E-R, 3640 Marshall Street. I want at this time to ask the council members to be very conscientious of the citizens' requests that have been coming forward for probably the last 2.5 years. We buy our homes in the residential areas. We're cognizant of the zonings around our neighborhood, our homes, only to be addressed at times when construction people come in and think it's all right to change those zones for their benefit. Please be considerate, and we're asking you maybe 1,000 times now. We have elected you to protect us. Changing residential zones to PRD has kind of become a big issue. Please think of us.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Judy Capra and Becky Zachmeyer on deck. And Ms. Capra, it looks like you have 9 minutes.
Yeah, I'm Judy Capra, that's C-A-P-R-A, and I'm at 4290 Teller Street. I gave serious thought to what am I going to say tonight. What's the most important, because my problem was I had so many different things going in my head, and I thought I want something that really will be heard. So I decided to focus on what I'd like to see in the way of a more working relationship between the city and the citizens. And that's what I'm going to suggest tonight comes out as an outgrowth of all the reading I've been doing, the city documents, the online readings, the NRS findings, the things I've been hearing in neighborhood discussions, because we've been meeting, and just what I've experienced from living in Wheat Ridge so many years. 4 items kept popping out at me in everything I looked at. And these 4 are just all core city documents as well as the NRS. And they are, the first thing is both the NRS report and the city's comprehensive plan. They both start by listing things that they say people value about living in Wheat Ridge. And those things are the same on those 2 lists from different times and different groups of people. And what they say is they value the small town character, not big city life. They value their neighbors and neighborhoods, the greenery, parks, and open space, the terrific westward views, their word, not mine, and the things that reflect our culture and history, which can be all too easily lost. So these things are things that come up all the time. And I'm thinking if these things were front and forward with the city, especially the planning department, and if every project were run with these 3 things in mind, I don't think there'd be nearly as much controversy. So those items I think are important to keep in mind all the time. Another one is the NRS report stated that people do not want major change. They're more or less happy with Wheat Ridge the way it is. That's true of our neighborhood. As a neighborhood, we're saying, okay, change we acknowledge, but they should be appropriate to the scale of our neighborhood. Another one that keeps popping up everywhere, so there's been the 5 elements that are important to people, the fact that we don't want major change. Another one is zoning. Boy, that is addressed everywhere, directly and indirectly. I think it's really important that rezoning not be taken lightly, especially the PRD angle. As Mr. Matthews adamantly warned, he talked about how the spot zoning type thing tends to creep, and there's a domino effect, and that's what we all fear, is just getting it started. The NRS said the public interest is in preservation and reuse of existing housing. That's stronger than interest in building new housing. Another NRS recommendation there. Then I went online and I read about urban development, because I know nothing about urban development. And apparently one of the most common mistakes cities make, and I read quite a few sites, is they fall into what they call the demolition and develop mode instead of the preserving and repurposing. They said what cities end up doing is destroying their character. They destroy the culture and history, which is the things that people said is what's important about Wheat Ridge is the culture and history. The four homes on Upham are examples of that because they reflect the farming history of Wheat Ridge, and maybe instead of being demolished, they should have been restored for modern urban farmers. And that's probably why I'm going to quote now Section 26-301 from the city charter. That's probably why they said the PRD shouldn't be used to circumvent the intent and spirit of the protections afforded by the other zoning restrictions. And yet we keep ignoring that. I don't understand it. The NRS, the fourth statement then, so the five things we value, that we don't want major change, that we have to think closely about rezoning. Residents want to be involved in planning, and not at the last minute. It's planning from the very beginning, and it's not token involvement. We want to be heard and know that we've made a difference. Over the last several city council meetings, it's only Zach Urban and Larry Matthews who we think seem to be listening, and I want to thank them both for their stances. And now I'm proposing that in the future, for every new development, the city works with the neighborhood before any conversation proceeds very far with any development. And yes, that's going to take time, but isn't the city supposed to represent the citizens? As it stands, the city spends a lot more time with the developer than with the neighborhood. And that's just wrong. The number of neighbors who should be involved depends on the size of the project. A garage is different from a major apartment complex. And ultimately, I think there should be a neighborhood agreement that's just as binding as the agreements you make with the developers. So the neighbors need reassurances, and the specifics would vary, but the general points should address the 5 assets that people say are important to them about living in Wheat Ridge. So they need to hear that, yes, we're looking at the greenery. Yes, we're considering mountain views. Yes, the cultural and historical evidence have been taken into account. So some of the things that might be on this binding agreement would be environmental impact, potential as well as actual, including but not limited to things like chemical usage. What's happening with de-icers? Are they going to just drain into the streets? Are they going to drain into the waterways? What are we doing with all those chemicals? What about the green space? There should be standards that we agree on with respect to gardens, trees, ground cover, everything that says this is the sizes and composition for what's necessary to maintain clean air, clean water, and mental health. We talk about mental health, and they're saying that for a mentally healthy individual, we need exposure to the outdoors. The other things that should be included are things about light, artificial light being kept to a minimum and sunlight to a maximum. And if either affects the neighboring lots, the city should intervene in favor of the neighbors. What about views? What's going to happen to the views as impact of the new development? Is it for the better or the worse? And who's most impacted? And how can this be minimized or mitigated? Water issues. I mean, the project on Upham had some major issues. What about noise? I'm going to focus on that one because that hasn't been talked about. The maximum noise level for a residential area seems to be the recommendation around 40 decibels or less. Another decibel comparison is if you had the highway traffic is generally around 70 decibels, so we're talking 40 here. And any higher levels, anything higher than 85 causes long-term hearing loss when exposed to that for any length of time. We'd ask that any higher levels than the 40 decibels be mitigated by the city, so we just don't keep getting a noisier and noisier community. Traffic needs to be addressed. If the maximum number of cars is exceeded, whatever that maximum number turns out to be, then what's going to happen? What will the consequences be? My reading on the internet told me that traffic that's detouring through a neighborhood is a sign of a poorly managed growth. Well, people detour down Upham and Teller all the time. At a previous meeting, Mr. Matthews asked, what happens when a street fails? We have given that question a lot of thought, and we'd like to know the answer. At what point will the city say it fails, and what will they do about it? There's something that got quoted from the planning department is why this was an okay, some developments are okay. It seems to be a fairly standard thing. It says that it promotes the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens and residents. I would like to know how most of these developments are promoting the health, our safety, our welfare. It's awfully easy to say these words without it meaning anything. At Planning Commission hearings, I think that the city should make sure that at least 50% of the neighborhood that's most impacted is present at the Planning Commission meeting so that they can have meaningful input. And all subsequent development should be put on hold for at least 1 year after a major project's open to see what the impact of that project's going to be before another project is added on top of it. I want to close with one quote from the city code. It's section 26-102. It says, "It's the intent of the zoning code to preserve the right of citizens to participate in the making of decisions which affect their properties." So how meaningful, in what ways are we asked in a meaningful way to participate in these making of decisions? I don't think it happens.
Thank you.
Please think about that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Becky Zachmeyer and Molly Mayfield on deck.
Hi, my name is Becky Zachmeyer, spelled Zachmeier. I live at 4200 Upham Street. Earlier this year in March, I attended a planning meeting when we had heard that there was proposals for condos and scraping to be happening on Upham Street. At that time, we watched a presentation by the developer that was the majority of the meeting. In the comments at the end of the meeting, I did come forward to speak and just had some questions. At that time, I was informed that I specifically asked about notification because no one in the neighborhood had been notified, and we all lived on Upham Street. We were told at that time that because we didn't live within 600 feet of the project, we wouldn't receive notification. So,
And Ms. Zachmeyer, we are not speaking about a particular project at this time. This needs to be general comments on things not on the agenda.
all right.
Thank you.
Well, however, since learning the truth about zoning and zoning changes and whatnot, I feel like I was misled at that time for any project. So I just wanted, when I read the minutes and it came to my attention that it looked like I was in favor of projects, such as the one that we had spoken of before, I wanted to correct the record to maintain that I am not in favor of zoning without neighborhood input, without notifying neighbors that are going to be impacted, and I just wanted to set the record straight on that topic.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Molly Mayfield and Jennifer Yates on deck.
Good evening. My name is Molly Mayfield, Mayfield. I live at 4065 Field Drive. I've lived on my block for 32 years, raised my kids there. I'm here tonight to speak on the topic of administrative subdivisions. Every day as I walk my dog, I get to witness the progress of a new home being built in the front yard of another house at 4055 Everett Street. A house in front of another house in their front yard. Some days I feel sad and some days I feel angry. I'm angry today. I'm angry on behalf of my neighbors who now have a tall house on a tiny lot staring down at them. I'm angry for other neighbors who have a tall house on a tiny lot blocking their views. I'm angry for the entire neighborhood because this affects our property values. Apparently, any lot big enough can be subdivided with no public notice, no neighborhood input, no planning commission review, and no city council review. This vilifies the city administrator, who apparently must approve as long as setbacks are met. Honestly, I see the point of infilling in some neighborhoods. I guess it makes sense. Urban neighborhoods with small lots and street lights and sidewalks, maybe it makes sense to infill, but that is not our neighborhood. You can't do that everywhere, and you can't do that without public input, without the voice of the neighborhood. Our neighborhood has large lots, it doesn't have sidewalks, it has a very rural feel. As I walk my dog, I shudder every day to think of which homes are going to be subdivided before this rule has changed. I urge you to revoke the administrative subdivision provisions in the Wheat Ridge Code. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Yates and Ehor Figlis on deck.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Yates, Y-A-T-E-S. I live at 3700 Miller Street. I was about 10 when I took the first drag off of a cigarette, and I didn't like the smoke and the taste. They weren't appealing to me. But as smoking had been introduced to me with the flavors of bubblegum, peach mango, strawberry, I might have continued. According to the 2017 Healthy Kids Colorado numbers, which are old, the 2019 will be coming out soon, 44% of middle and high schooler students have tried e-cigarettes, with 27% using in the last 30 days. This is twice the national average. 87% feel that smoking traditional cigarettes is risky, while only 50% think vaping is risky, and 58% think it's easy to get e-cigarettes. This is a collection of vape products that I confiscated from my 3 high school students. I truly believe that they know the risks and they would prefer not to vape, but the peer pressure is so unbelievably strong that they do it. These are not just Wheat Ridge High School students. They're not the typical risk-taking kids that are vaping. It's students from every walk of life, including honor roll students, kids involved in sports, drama, and other school, church, and community activities. While the federal and state governments are starting to look at ways to curb this epidemic, as usual, they are very slow to get things done. As a smaller city, I think it's time we step up and make it harder for these products to make their way into our schools. I would like to see a licensing program put into place for retailers that sell nicotine products. This will help hold them accountable and allow for suspensions or revocations of the license if they're caught selling to underage persons. Raising the legal age to possess and to purchase to 21 would also help stop the epidemic that we primarily have in our younger citizens. It sends a message that this is not a healthy choice. I'm asking council to take into consideration and support an ordinance that a number of our surrounding communities have already done to help curb this. And it would be nice if we could have something in place before our new 6th graders hit middle school in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ehor Figlis and Rachel Holteen on deck.
Good evening, Ehor Figlis, F-I-G-L-U-S. I live at 9775 West 36th Avenue. And I'd like to talk about affordable housing and development in Wheat Ridge. You had a presentation on affordable housing at the last study session, and I think this topic is timely. As an example, I want to use a recent proposal the City Council heard, which was to replace 4 single-family homes with a development that would house almost 40 townhouses.
That sounds like a project that's on the docket.
I want to talk.
today,
This is about affordable housing.
Okay,
so if you
please.
take those properties and look up online the values, the average value of those properties is about $350,000. Based on a 5% interest rate with a 90% mortgage loan value, that would generate a monthly payment of approximately $1,700 a month. The townhomes, which were proposed on that area, were said to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000.
Mr. Figlis, I don't want to keep bringing up the 40th and Upham project.
I'm talking in
Well, you're
general.
talking about the 38 or 40 townhomes at that location. Please make it more general.
I'm making the affordability as using an example. So if you take a $400,000 home and apply the same 90%, 5% interest rate, you will have a monthly payment of $1,900 a month. Plus, if you're in a community like that, you also have a home owners association fee, which is generally calculated on the internet as being approximately 20%, which would add another $400 to that monthly payment, which would generate a monthly payment of $2,300 a month, effectively costing such a property approximately $473,000 rather than the $350,000 properties that are replaced. Now, at the study session presentation, at the end of it, there was a summary of actionable items and recommendations. And the number one thing there was to preserve what affordability already exists. Realtor.com shows that 60% of current home buyers are ready to buy a home that needs renovation. So I ask you, which is more affordable? A $1,700 monthly payment from someone who's ready to renovate their home, or a $2,300 payment? And which better preserves the character of which is more affordable? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rachel Holteen.
Good evening, Mayor Starker and Council. My name is Rachel Holteen, and I live at 4690 Balsam Street. So I have a joke. How can you tell if somebody has read the Game of Thrones? All right, you guys have Robert's rules, so you don't get to answer my joke. You don't have to. They'll tell you they've read it. If you look at those books, it is thousands and thousands of pages. And a couple years ago, that was my favorite joke, because guess who read those books? Yeah. And so as the lazy people were watching the HBO series, I was like, I read the books. I had to get through 350 pages before anything happened. And a couple years ago, that was a great joke, because that really meant something a couple years ago. And I'm not actually watching the series, because I don't have HBO. But my understanding from my Twitter feed is that the series has gone wildly off script from the books. And so it no longer matters that I've read the books, because it is its own thing now. And I wanted to start with that joke, because sometimes we need more jokes up here. But there's people like me who have read the book, and I've read Game of Thrones. I don't think I would recommit to that now, knowing that the series is so good. But I've also read a lot of other policy documents. And unlike Game of Thrones, where they get to go wildly off script when dragons become really exciting and solve a lot of problems, you guys don't get to do that. Our city doesn't get to go wildly off script when it gets more interesting to our citizens. We're actually bound to scripts and to charters and to policies that have not been drafted by a guy with 2 R's for middle names, but by our citizens. And I really appreciate that about our city. And it's why I come here a lot on Monday nights. I'm also here because my son has scouts on Monday, so I don't have HBO. I don't have a kid, so this is my Game of Thrones. Thank you. I know who I'm pulling for. I know who has the dragons. As I've come over the years, one of the things that shows up a lot in the script up here is what plays well in Game of Thrones but does not play here is the last minute surprise, the battle with the you didn't see it coming. And the you didn't see it coming in the civic arena is really crushing. It really kind of chips away at why we show up and why we care. And one of the things that is hard for me is I've read the books, I've read the scripts, and the you didn't see it coming is really hard for everyone who's in the room. And that hardness is for the citizens, it's for our elected officials, it's for our staff, it's for the people who bring their good ideas to our city. And so something I'd like you to consider, our charter allows legal protests to be filed almost until a meeting starts, a hearing starts. Those protests changes the rules of the game in real time. I would like council to consider an ordinance that automatically defers the hearing for any legal protest that triggers a supermajority until the next city council meeting. It's fun in Game of Thrones, but it's not fun here. I'd like to sit through a hearing in which everyone understands the playbook and what they're up against and what's happening when they walk in the room, not in real time. So our charter allows that protest, and it's a good protest that we're granted as citizens, but we should all have time to understand how that impacts the civic processes that we're engaged in. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the list of speakers that I have signed up to speak. Is there anyone here now who is not signed up to speak who would like to come and speak at this time? You may do so at this time. Please come forward and give us your name, spell your last name and your address, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Raleigh Sorrentino, 4175 Teller Street. I heard you loud and clear at the beginning of the meeting that citizens' right to speak is for items not on the agenda. Yet I heard our honorable and respected ex-mayor and council member stand up here for 3 minutes and talk about an agenda item. Therefore, I'm asking you respectfully to open it up to anyone else who wants to speak on that agenda item tonight. And fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who hasn't signed up to speak who would like to speak, who hasn't done so? Okay, with that, we will close our public comment. And our first order of business is item number 1. This is the consent agenda. There were no items that council wished to take off the consent agenda item, consent calendar. So would you, Ms. Weaver, would you please introduce item number 1?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am introducing on the consent agenda the items A through E, and I will read through them right now. 1A is a motion to award a contract and approve subsequent payments to Independent Roofing Specialists, LLC, Commerce City, Colorado, in the amount of $478,710 for hail damage repairs to parks, forestry, open space, and public works structures. Consent agenda item 1B, resolution 28-2019, approving an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Lakewood providing for resurfacing of 26th Avenue between Kipling Street and Oak Street. Consent agenda item 1C, a motion to approve a contribution to the Wheat Ridge Business District for the purpose of funding the Business Improvement Grant Program in the amount of $90,000. Consent agenda item 1D, resolution. Did I just read that? I skipped one.
No, that's good.
Did I skip one? No, I'm on D. Resolution 29-2019, amending the fiscal year 2019 general fund budget to reflect the approval of the supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $8,155 for the Foothill Animal Shelter Special Assessment. And consent agenda item 1E, a resolution 27-2019, approving the memorandum of understanding between Signal Behavior Health Network and the City of Wheat Ridge to receive and distribute Narcan nasal spray kits.
Thank you. A motion is in order on the consent items number 1A through E.
I move to accept consent agenda items 1A through 1E.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please poll the council?
Point of order, please. Could I have just a short comment for discussion?
We don't usually have discussion on consent agenda items, but in this case, I will let you comment.
Thank you. I would have asked to take one of the items out, but I have a comment in general, and it regards the Wheat Ridge Business Association spending, and I have no doubt that this is fine, and I'm going to vote for it. But I would like us all to consider that perhaps when we okay spending money like that, instead of just getting a one-line item, that we should have some mechanism to see where the money is actually being spent for all of these types of items. And that would be my comment I would make, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to say that.
Thank you. And just for clarity, this is not the Wheat Ridge Business Association. This is the Wheat Ridge Business District. Okay. Will the clerk please poll the council?
And who was the second?
Mr. Pond.
That's what I thought. Okay. Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Our next item is item number 2. Mr. Matthews, please
Thank you.
address.
Item number 2 is Resolution 31-2019, a resolution approving an amended and restated service plan and intergovernmental agreement with the Ward TOD Metropolitan District numbers 1 through 3. The financial impact is there's no financial impact on the city.
Thank you. This is a public hearing with a resolution. I'm going to open the public hearing. And Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do, a very quick one. Megan Murphy with White Bear, Enkel, Tanaka, and Waldron are here. Did I say that right, Megan? Is here representing the developer in this case. You saw her at the previous study session last Monday. She's here to give a quick update and presentation on this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Goff. Megan Murphy, White Bear, Ankley, Tanaka, and Waldron. I saw you folks last Monday. We have fixed the service plan about the fire service and submitted that to the city attorney and the city manager, and they are okay with the change. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have tonight.
Okay, actually, before we have questions on this, we're going to go to the public. I have no one signed up to speak on this item. Is there anyone here who is not signed up who would like to speak on this item at this time? All right, we will go for questions from council for our speaker. Any questions from council? Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To kind of piggyback on what Ms. Rachel Hulteen indicated about reading the Book of Thrones, I didn't read that, but I did read through the service plan here. I don't know, I can't decide which is more exciting, Game of Thrones or the service plan. But in reading through this, on page 2, there's an indication of, on the first paragraph, that fees as limited by section 4.A.7, but there is no section 4.A.7. And then further down, there's another reference to section 4.B, and that again is incorrect. And then on page 3, the fees section describes section 4.A.7, and then it goes on. There's several other inaccuracies here, so I guess my question would be for the city attorney. When we have so many different erroneous information in this service plan, does it need to be amended again and brought back to us, or how do we proceed with these?
And I can respond after you, Mr. Dahl.
Fair enough. Actually, I was going to ask Megan to articulate if these are truly errors or there's something else going on. If they're truly errors, then I'm happy to answer your question and with a procedure.
Might have to take me back to the first one I caught. I'm on page 2 at the top, section 4A7, should be 4A8. I'll own that one straight off.
And then
Can you read the second one again?
Under capital plan, after the bolded exhibit E, it says reference in section 4.B, which includes, so that section 4.B.
That refers to the preliminary engineering survey, which is on page 7, and it talks about exhibit E.
Right, but that's in section 5, not section 4. Let's see.
Oh, I see. Again, my error, and I will own it.
Okay, and then on page 3, under the item fees, it says, as described in section 4.A.7 below.
I think that's the same mistake and should refer to section 8.
Okay, and then below
I'm not having a very great night up here, am I?
Then under the next item, financial plan means the financial plan described in section 5. I believe that's also, I'm not sure if that should be, I think that should be section 6, not section 5.
Yep, right again. Let's keep rolling.
All right, and then under Section 4, boundaries, proposed land use, population projections. The last sentence says limitations set forth in section 4 below.
Can you give me that reference one more time? I apologize.
Page 5, section 4, the first paragraph, last sentence, limitations set forth in section 4 below.
Yeah, you just got it. Keep rolling. Again, another mistake. It looks like we're off an entire section. So every section reference will need to be double checked. And we could do that here while I hang my head in shame, or I can resubmit with better section references. Your preference, council.
And then let's see here. On page 10, it references section 5.c.2 above.
Page 10. At the very top?
Page 10, item number 2, second paragraph of the page. Oh, wait, sorry. Item number 3 is the third paragraph in.
Okay.
And then that's, let's see. Then if you go into the IGA with the city, there's several references in the IGA, which I believe is a separate agreement away from the service plan. And there's several references to sections in that aren't relative to the IGA, they're relative to the service plan. So they don't necessarily reference the service plan in there, but it is referencing the sections of the service plan. So I would ask that there be some sort of
on that one, the last whereas on the front page of the IGA says all defined terms have the meaning as set forth in the service plan. I'm happy to take the section references out if you would prefer. Typically, the IGA is added as an exhibit, and that's why the sections are in there, and we're referring to the service plan when we do so.
Okay, I just, because it's, because it is a separate document or a separate agreement that we have away from the service plan, I would like to at least ask that there be a little bit more delineation between the two. But
okay.
That's all the ones that I could catch. I don't know if there's any additional ones or if anybody else has any questions.
Mr. Dahl, would you like to opine?
Sure. This happens occasionally where you have one section reference and there's a domino effect. What I would suggest when you get to the point of a motion, you have a recommended motion here in the packet, and when you're done with any other questions and discussion, for things like this, I typically add at the end of the motion. Right now it says move to approve the resolution, including the IGA, and I would ask that you add with the section references corrected as noted on the hearing record for the service plan and the intergovernmental agreement, and others as approved by the city attorney. And I only ask for that last phrase so that when these documents are run out and final, I can have a conversation with Megan, we can page through and just make sure we caught them all. I don't think it needs to delay your action on the substance of the plan at all, but I'd ask that phrase be added to the motion when you take it.
Thank you. Is there further discussion or questions from staff on this?
No, I had put something in here about with corrections that I noticed by Councilman Urban, but I will just refer to your statement to make it a little more precise and concise.
I have a few more questions.
Mr. Urban.
So I'm done with the editing part, and now it's more of the content. So,
okay.
Yeah, you're good on that. Council members only paid $600 a month, so my bill's not very big. As far as the mill levy is concerned, it says that there's a limitation of 60 mills, but then it goes on to say relative to the debt service that the mill levy may be unlimited. Could you expand upon that, why that's an unlimited caveat there?
Yeah, so this is what we call a roll-off debt service mill levy. So first of all, we're just talking about the debt service mill levy, not the operations mill levy. when debt exceeds 50% of assessed value, equal to or exceeds the maximum debt mill levy is 60 mils. As the AV increases, your debt to AV ratio will drop down. When it does that, you roll off or have an unlimited debt mill levy. What that really means is you can refinance your debt at a better deal, and no board would put it above 60 because your AV is so high you can support your debt load with less of a mill levy. Does that make sense?
Mhm. And then in the previous service plan, there was an indication that 10 mils was for operations and only 50 mils was remaining. So why is there no delineation between the two in this one as opposed to the previous service plan?
Yeah, good question. So this service plan is based on Yarrow Gardens that you saw maybe last fall, August-ish, and they had a 60 debt mill levy cap with unlimited operations, so that's what we chose to present for this redo. The financial plan, which is attached to the service plan, shows 10 for operations. That's a fair number, that's what we estimate, but we don't know for sure.
And then as far as any public improvement fees that may be assessed or charged, is there any kind of cap or limitation on the fees that may be charged in this?
Well, we got the reference wrong, but we got the language right in this one. So we're on page 6 here in section 8. This allows the districts to impose fees for both debt and operations and maintenance. The current plan, which you've seen from Toll Brothers for this project, is to have an HOA that will handle all fees and covenant enforcement. So don't anticipate any fees at this time.
So, but then what I don't like about this is that it goes on to say, notwithstanding any of the foregoing, which means forget about what I just said. And then it goes on to say, the restrictions in this definition shall not apply to any fee imposed upon or collected from taxable property for the purpose of funding operations, maintenance costs of the district, including the establishment of a reserve and for future repairs or costs. So when you use the phrase notwithstanding any of the foregoing, it just sort of says, in my mind, that makes it as though that you're saying that that there's a limitation on fee, but then not really.
Yeah, let me be very clear. This service plan provides the power to impose fees for both debt and operations and maintenance. The debt fee can't be imposed on anybody who buys a house, an end user. The operations fee could be. The service plan allows that, so I'll be very clear on that point. The developer doesn't plan to impose that. Toll is the only developer in this project, and they're planning to have an HOA, but the service plan would allow it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So I'll stop with the questions, and I'll just say that one of my concerns about these metro districts are that in its current formation in this service plan area, you have 112 mills. The mills on my property is 89. The surrounding properties of this are around 92. And the concern I have is with the bifurcation and the sort of cutting up of the city into micro districts to where we have an untold number of taxable or taxing authorities and not really being able to educate an end user or consumer on this. So that would be one of my concerns as we go forward, because as we've seen in this example here, this is a copy and paste from Yarrow Gardens. And while I do agree that in certain circumstances, metro districts provide good funding for infrastructure, the backside of it is how do you educate a consumer when they're buying a house of all the various fees and whatnot you have. I understand that in this document, one of the requirements was to notify all the special districts within a certain radius, and not all these districts are impact this particular property, but the ones that do, you have the Fruitdale Sanitation District, you have the Valley Water District, you have the Arvada Fire District, you have the Regional Transportation District, you have the City of Wheat Ridge, you have, I can go on, but so one of my concerns as we go forward on this is that we understand the impact of this down the road, and when the City of Wheat Ridge is considering allowing more of these, that we do a better job at the due diligence and also considering limiting the mills that are allowed on this, because at this point, this will place this particular property in one of the highest tax increments, if you will, or tax brackets as far as property taxes go. So I will be voting in favor of this, but I will be wanting us to take a closer look at these types of metro districts in the future.
May I respond to that?
Yes, you may.
I just wanted to note that on page 12 and 13, there's a section about disclosure to purchasers. We're very, very sensitive about our purchasers because the mill levy is only what the market will bear. So we will be sending the notice, the form of notice, filing it with Patrick, the city manager, prior to issuing any debt. We want to work with everyone, real estate agents, recording documents. We don't want you to ever be surprised you're in a metro district. And please know, I mean that. We're working towards that. It's not perfect. We could get better, but we are trying. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I close the public hearing, are there any more questions of staff on this issue? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, and a motion is in order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 31-2019, a resolution approving an amended and restated service plan and intergovernmental agreement with the Ward TOD Metropolitan District numbers 1 through 3 with the corrective language requested by the city attorney.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Urban.
I was just going to ask the city attorney if that motion is...
Yep, that works. We're on the record for that, and it'll be so reflected in the minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move to agenda item number 3. Mr. Pond, would you please introduce item number 3?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 32-2019, resolution approving a cooperation agreement between the City of Wheat Ridge and the Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal Authority for the Applewood Village redevelopment.
This is a public hearing with a resolution. It is not quasi-judicial, but I would like to open the public hearing. And Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do. We have staff and several guests. Mr. Art, our Economic Development Manager, will introduce the item and then turn it over to our guest.
Thank you very much, members of the council. Steve Art, Economic Development Manager and Executive Director of the Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal Authority. Tonight we come before you to request a cooperation agreement between the City of Wheat Ridge and Renewal Wheat Ridge for the transport of 1 cent of the local 3.5 sales cents tax to Renewal Wheat Ridge for a period of 5 years that will help repay an obligation for the shuttered Walmart building that is now being redeveloped at the corner of 38th and Youngfield. I won't go through the specifics of what's going into that site there because we do have a presentation for you this evening from the developer about that, and they can tell you all about that. What this cooperation agreement will allow you to do is to allow our finance department on a monthly basis to accept those sales tax revenues from those new users in the site there and then transfer 1 cent of that local sales tax to the Renewal Wheat Ridge to repay an obligation. That obligation to the developer will be $2,874,000 or 5 years, whichever shall occur first. It's estimated over the life of the urban renewal plan area, which to 2040 we did an evaluation of the revenues that will be flowing in. That activity, that project, when complete, it will, in the first years, will generate approximately $1 million in sales tax revenue and then build up over the years. And eventually by 2040, it'll produce over $2 million annually as revenue to the city. Your obligation would only be for 5 years. And we think that by 2040, it will net at least $31 million in additional sales tax revenue for the city. With that, I'd like to introduce Tom Metzger. Tom Metzger is with the Regency Centers. He has a short presentation for you this evening about the redevelopment project for any members of the audience, the people watching at home that may not know what's going on in that exciting new development that's going on in the Walmart building at 38th and Youngfield. Tom, it's all yours.
Thank you, and I'd just like to correct one, I believe, a misstatement that you made. It's not $2,874,000, it's $2,874.
Correct. Thank you.
Correct.
I apologize.
Good evening, Tom Metzger, 8480 East Orchard Road, Suite 6900, Greenwood Village, Colorado. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council this evening about the Applewood Village Shopping Center. Council saw some of this a few weeks ago at the study session, so I don't know how much detail you want me to go into on some of the preliminary matters about Regency centers, or I can just get right to the site plan and talk about the property. Do that. So this is the Applewood Village Shopping Center. North is left on this screen. We're talking about the redevelopment of the former Walmart space at the north end of the property. It was about 137,000 square feet of real estate. Okay. We're here before the council regarding the investment in the property and seeking assistance from the City Council with respect to sales tax cooperation agreement with the Urban Renewal Authority. The cost to redevelop this property is just about $20 million. We've attracted 4 best-in-class retailers, we think, to the city of Wheat Ridge that's going to provide a very good, stable tax base and replacement for the Walmart lost sales tax revenue. We have Hobby Lobby taking about 55,000 square feet at the north end of the building. 2 TJ Maxx companies are taking the next 2 20,000 square feet each, Home Goods and Sierra Trading Post. And then Ulta Beauty, which is a cosmetics type store, is taking 10,000 feet. And then we have about 14,000 feet unaccounted for and vacant at the south end of the building. The building is 47 years old this year. If you've watched it at all, you can see the tremendous amount of structural retrofit and rebuilding that's been going on with the building. The entire site's torn up. When we're finished, it'll essentially be a new property. There'll be new water lines, new sewer lines, new stormwater quality devices, new paving, new pedestrian access through the parking lots, new landscaping, new LED lighting. All along 38th Avenue here will be a detached sidewalk with street trees and city street lights. We have a parcel out here. RTD is finishing their lease term here next week, and this parcel will become available for future development. So we're very excited about the potential for sales tax growth and strong retailing at the north end of the shopping center after about 18 months of pretty quiet activity out there. These are some renderings of what we're building right now. It's starting to take shape if you've been out there recently. That's the Hobby Lobby on the north end to the left, the Home Goods, Sierra Trading Post, and then Ulta on the right there to the south. We think it's a pretty attractive facade. That's a close-up of the Sierra Trading Post. We've got a Nichiha wood product on the facade with stone and brick elements and some stucco, a lot of ornamental structural steel. This is a site plan that shows some of the improvements that will be made with the property tax and sales tax increment. As I mentioned, along the north side of the property, West 38th Avenue, we'll have revised curb cuts in and out of the shopping center that make it a little bit better spacing for traffic entering and exiting the shopping center. Along the corner of 38th and Youngfield will be in the future. So by October, you'll see these improvements. The facade will be finished. We expect the tenants to be moving in and generating some sales tax revenue for the holiday season. And all of the north section of 38th Avenue will be completed. As you look down Youngfield, those are improvements that if this tax increment financing project is approved, we'll be embarking on those immediately by hiring engineers and working with staff to plan the improvements along Youngfield. That would be detached sidewalks, street trees, street lights, and landscaping from 38th all the way down to the Hacienda Colorado property. We'd also be taking on the intersection there at the I-70 on-ramp, which is a cattywampus intersection that we've all been through. And I work for the shopping center, and I still get confused when I'm trying to turn into the shopping center. So we're going to work with Public Works to reorient that intersection and try and straighten that out. So a lot of infrastructure getting put into this property, and we're excited to see a transformation take place. We've been working on it for a few years now, and we've got some more time to go. Let's see, I'm not sure how to go back here. Well, just that site plan, I guess. That one's good. So this colored site plan shows a little bit more of the improvements we've been making over the years. On the south end of the property, you're familiar with the Starbucks on the corner that replaced the Conoco. We have the King Soopers Fuel Center that replaced a vacant building. We have a stormwater detention pond behind the fuel center that handles all the water quality so that the stormwater runoff is captured and sediment is taken out of it so that nothing ends up in Clear Creek. We'll be doing the same thing at the north end as part of this Walmart redevelopment project for these new retailers. Hacienda Colorado is well under construction, as you've seen. We're expecting them to open after Labor Day. We don't have a firm date with them yet. It's a brand new prototype for them. It's the first time they've built it, so it's still a work in progress. That's really all I've got, and I'm here available for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. So I just want to conclude with this is a very exciting time for this shopping center as it goes under reconstruction. I just want to tell you, though, the sales tax that you will be obligating through cooperation agreement is only for the new users of the Walmart building. It does not affect any of the other users within that shopping center. So the 4 new users, and then if the 5th user, the vacant 14,000 or 17,000 square foot is in your staff report, if that becomes a sales tax producing entity, that too would be included into that 5 years or that $2 million plus number that you have. Just want to finish up with, this is not an unknown precedent. Council in previous times have approved cooperation agreements with the Kipling Ridge Shopping Center, the Corners at Wheat Ridge, most recently with Swiss Flower and Gift Cottage, and the Hacienda Colorado restaurant. We also did a financial analysis on this, and Tim Morzell from Economic and Planning Systems is here tonight. If you have any questions specifically on the economics and how we arrived at those numbers, we'd be happy to answer. With that, Mayor, I'd encourage you to open up the public hearing, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions from council.
Thank you. Before we go to questions from council, I would like to open it up for citizens' right to speak on this issue. This is item number 3. I have no one signed up to speak. Is there anyone who is not signed who would like to speak on this item? And I don't see any, so I will open this up for questions of council for our staff on the presentation. Do we have anyone with questions? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, and a motion is in order. Mr. Pond.
Thank you. I move to approve resolution number 32-2019, a resolution approving a cooperation agreement between the City of Wheat Ridge and the Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal Authority for the Applewood Village redevelopment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you very much. Our next item is item number 4. Mr. Urban, would you please introduce item number 4?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 05-2019, an ordinance amending section 16-132 and subsection 16-133H of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to exempt needle stick prevention and syringe exchange program participants from criminal prosecution. At issue, Council Bill 05-2019 provides an exemption from criminal prosecution for individuals who actively alert law enforcement or first responders to the presence of injection devices and for participants in a clean syringe exchange program.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have an ordinance number for this?
We do. This will be ordinance number 1666.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing, an ordinance on second reading. It is not quasi-judicial, but I would like to open the public hearing. And Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We don't. I think Mr. Urban covered everything in the issue statement. This was brought forward by Mr. Urban and with consensus from City Council to put it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to open this up for any discussion, comments from the public. I have no one signed up to speak. Is there anyone here who would like to come forward and speak on this item? I see none, so before I close the public hearing, do we have any, we didn't have a presentation, but I want to make sure that do we have any questions before I close the public hearing and ask for a motion? Then we're going to close the public hearing, and a motion is order, Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 05-2019, an ordinance amending section 16-132 and subsection 16-133H of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws to exempt needle stick prevention and syringe exchange program participants from criminal prosecution on second reading, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Christine? You're dead. Okay, all right. Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Bless you. Before the councilor has requested that we take a short 10-minute break before we go on to our next agenda items. So we will stand for about a 10-minute break. Thank you. We will now move to item number 5, 6, and 7. We will consider these as a, we'll take different motions on them when the time comes, but we will consider them together. Ms. Davis, would you please introduce items 5, 6, and 7?
Thank you. Council Bill Number 02-2019, an ordinance approving a zone change from Residential 3 R3 to Outline Development Plan ODP for property located at 4000 to 4066 Upham Street, case number WZ-18-17, Ridgetop Village. The issue, the applicant is requesting approval of zone change from Residential 3 to planned residential development with an outline development plan for property located at 4000 to 4066 Upham Street. The purpose of this request is to prepare the property for development of a 38-unit townhome project. The request is one of the 3 related requests for this development. The other 2 requests for approval of a specific development plan and major subdivision plot. On April 8, 2019, a public hearing was conducted for these related cases, and City Council voted 5-3 to approve this council bill. However, legal protest was received for this case. Therefore, an affirmative vote of 6 council members was required. On April 22nd, the bill was approved for reconsideration. The public hearing will not be reopened, but a new vote will take place. If approved, the SDP and subdivision plan will also be voted upon.
And please introduce item number 6 and 7 also.
Okay.
Just read the title of the.
Okay, let me whip through here real quick. Hold on, hold on. Sorry. Got it. I think. Thank you. I don't have the little side on my side of the thing. Thank you. Resolution number 19-2019, a resolution approving a specific development plan, SDP, for property located at 4046 Upham Street, case number WZ-18-18, Ridgetop Village. And then item number 7 is resolution number 2029, a resolution approving a major subdivision for property located at 4000 to 4066 Upham Street, case number WS-18-02, Ridgetop Village.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Dahl, this is a reconsideration, and you had some, we don't deal with these every day. Would you please provide us with a few comments on this?
Sure, you bet. There's a little more unusual procedure here, and thanks for the opportunity. As was mentioned by Councilmember Davis in describing the issue for number 5, numbers 5, 6, and 7, a rezoning, a specific development plan, and a subdivision were combined for public hearing, and Council has seen that before, and you often will combine matters for public hearing, take a single hearing, and then individual motions after that hearing has been closed. Typically, as is true here, for a matter which requires a zone change, then the specific development plan and subdivision. If the zone change is approved, then you move forward with the other 2 actions. If the zone change is not approved, there's no reason to go forward with the other actions because they can't be sustained if the zoning is not in place. So that's why these 3 are together, but it's also true, and it's also why number 5 is first, because that's the rezoning. If it doesn't pass, then you don't get to the other 2. As was mentioned, this was noticed out for a public hearing under the code on April the 8th, and you conducted that hearing on all 3 matters on April the 8th and closed the hearing on that date. On that evening, the council voted to deny, 5 in favor and 3 against, and as was mentioned, there was a valid protest that's still in effect, and that required under the city's charter and code a supermajority, so it required 6 votes to approve the rezoning. Importantly, I want to mention that if this matter goes forward, only a regular majority is required on the other 2 items because they are not ordinances and they are not subject to that protest/supermajority requirement. So in any event, that was your action on April the 8th after you closed the hearing. Pursuant to the council rules, which permit a member on the prevailing side, which in this particular case was one of the three members voting against, since they prevailed, they had the right, any one of those members had the right to ask for reconsideration, and that took place on April the 22nd. That reconsideration motion passed, and is very commonly what you do when you approve a reconsideration, or when you set something for reconsideration. You set it for the substantive decision at a later date, and that later date's tonight, because that's where you set it from. Procedurally, what happens with reconsideration is when a proper reconsideration motion is made and passed, as is the case here, you effectively, when you get to the night you decide to take the substantive matter, which is tonight, effectively you've gotten in a time machine and you've gotten back in time to April the 8th, just after you closed the public hearing and before you took any substantive motions. So now you're free to, and you must actually act again, or must act anew, really, because you've turned the clock back to that point in time, and so you start taking motions. As I mentioned earlier, a valid protest was filed. It's still valid. So for these matters, 6 votes required for number 5, that's the zoning. 5 votes, because you've got a full council here, so it's a majority of a quorum, are required for the SDP and the subdivision. I want to mention that Councilmember Weaver, her participation was questioned and confirmed really on April the 8th. And as council's aware, there's a charter, section 5.9, that requires council members to vote on all matters except for personal or private financial interests. And on all other matters, the council member must vote unless excused by all of the remaining members of the council unanimously. And as you know, I asked that be the procedure, and council voted not to excuse. And so therefore, you followed the charter, and Councilmember Weaver was required to vote, and continues to be required to vote on this matter tonight, on all 3 of them, actually. The last thing I guess I'd mention is that since April the 8th, there's been some public comment on this to a greater or a lesser degree focused on the Upham project. There's also been a lawsuit filed challenging the council's actions on a couple of things. This included, as it took them on April the 8th. And my advice to you is this: your obligation when you receive a rezoning, subdivision, and specific development plan application is to consider and act on those applications based upon the hearing record that was developed before you, and that hearing record was developed and closed on April the 8th, compared against the code, and that is your job. Additional comments and litigation are not a part of the hearing record, and you're required to base your decision on the hearing record and the code. And so I would ask that you do that. You do that every time you act after a public hearing. And it's no different here, even though there has been intervening time. I want to emphasize that the judge conducted the trial, and that's you. The trial got concluded, and the judge, you, rendered your decision on the rezoning. And the fact that that decision has been delayed to tonight doesn't change the fact that it's the same record that you render your decision on. So at this point, you've put yourself in the position of taking basically new motions and having council discussion on it.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on second reading. Madam Clerk, do we have an ordinance number?
I don't have, it was assigned last time, whatever that was. I don't.
Okay, we will go with the previously assigned.
Excuse me. It is 1667.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, a motion is in order.
Thank you. I move to approve Council Bill number 02-2019, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 4000 to 4066 Upham Street from residential 3 R3 to planned residential development PRD, with approval of an outline development plan on second reading, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication for the following reasons. 1, the Planning Commission has recommended approval of the rezoning after conducting a proper public hearing. 2, the proposed rezoning has been reviewed by the Community Development Department, which has forwarded its recommendations of approval. And 3, the proposed rezoning has been found to comply with the criteria for review in section 26-303 of the Code of Laws.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before I go to a discussion on the motion, will the clerk please verify that we've cleared the board from the last time? Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try to proceed slowly here so that I don't misspeak or get ahead of myself. Last time I spoke on this issue, I mentioned, and I think my exact quote was, as I get older, ethics and integrity get increasingly important to me. That would infer a little bit that they weren't important to start with, but they were very much so. The reason ethics and integrity gets increasingly important to me is because as I've gotten older, I've seen a lot of less importance placed on ethics and integrity. We have a system, and our system here revolves around a quasi-judicial hearing in which we are supposed to only take testimony from within the actual official hearing. Part of what that system entails is not having any ex parte contact, which was why I had placed an objection to having our new councilwoman participate in the voting on this, because she had been a member of the Planning Commission, had gone through a hearing and actual vote on this issue. And I didn't believe that it should happen again. We brought up, or someone, and I don't know who brought it up, but brought up an issue that our city attorney addressed, that all council members must vote on all items unless excused. And therein lies the rub, and therein lies where ethics and integrity come in. The intent of our system should be to maintain quasi-judicial and ex parte concepts. And it would have been very simple for us to do that. We simply could have excused Councilwoman Weaver from voting. But a majority of our council chose not to do that. And that's where I think our ethics falls short. I find it interesting that earlier today it was suggested that in order to not get caught having ex parte communication, we just watch Planning Commission on TV. It's my understanding that ex parte communication can come in a lot of ways. You shouldn't read a newspaper article about it. If we have an article in the Gazette about a piece of property, we may see the headline, but then we don't go and delve into the article itself. We just turn to the next page. We don't watch it on TV. So that's where I find ethics and integrity comes into play, is we don't circumvent the intent of our rules and our procedures. It's also mentioned that we should have allowed our applicant to have his say at the last reconsideration hearing. Part of our rules for quasi-judicial hearings is that applicants, opponents, and proponents are prohibited from making ex parte contact, that is, contact outside of the public hearing forum, with any member of the decision-making authority. And I objected to that at the reconsideration hearing. I thought it was totally inappropriate. There again, following the integrity, trying to maintain the integrity of our quasi-judicial system. I'm really sorry that Councilwoman Weaver got caught in the middle of this. I mean, it's not her fault. It's our fault as a council for not allowing her to recuse herself. And I would mention and bring up that what a difference a year makes. Looking back at our council agenda packet from 2/12/18, and I'm reading from our last minutes, Council Member Hoppy left the council chambers at 8:04. She recused herself because she said she had prior knowledge of the zoning issue that was up for vote. And going on farther, I see one for Councilman Pond where he refused himself because he had prior knowledge. He was a member of another, it was either, I can't remember, I'm looking at these. He was a member of the Housing or not Urban Renewal, but one of the other, he had heard testimony from another board or commission. And he was allowed by council to recuse himself. So I'm trying to figure out what's changed in the last year. We had a mechanism then for someone to be recused, and now we've totally disregarded it. And I'm disappointed, thoroughly disappointed, that we have gone down this road. Either we are going to have quasi-judicial proceedings, or we should just stop the pretense and cut them out of our system completely. That's all I have to say tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Hoppy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I would like to say that I recused myself from that vote because I was at the time looking at purchasing that property and had spent several amounts of time looking at purchasing it, but did not want to purchase it unless it was rezoned. Therefore, I had a direct financial conflict, and I spoke with the city attorney, and he agreed that I should recuse myself. Second, ethics and integrity. I really am sick and tired of people saying that we have no ethics and no integrity. The city charter is the people's document. You don't like the people's document? Change it. You, the people, get to vote on that. You get to vote on what goes in that. So if you don't like what's in it, change it. I'm absolutely happy to help you pull some changes from the charter and put them on to vote on. You don't like that there's 35 feet as our maximum height in our charter? Change it. You don't like the way that we are allowed to recuse ourselves or not recuse ourselves? Change it. You have the power in your vote to change that. Again, allowing the developer to speak as every citizen of our Denver metro area comes in here to speak on agenda items, at that point, that was a closed hearing and it failed. So he was absolutely allowed to come in here and speak.
Thank you. Is there, before I get back to you, is there additional, Mr. Keeter?
I think some precision of language is necessary here. Ex parte literally means from one side in Latin. Ex parte communications are when an arbiter or a judge is contacted by only one side and has a direct conversation with somebody without all parties present. The Planning Commission hearing, that is not an ex parte communication. The applicant or objectors getting up in front of this whole board with everybody present is not an ex parte communication. We can have a discussion on evidence from outside of the hearing record, and as Mr. Dahl said, judges deal with this all the time, and that's our obligation to make sure that we are making a decision based on the record. But to the extent that there's any ethical association with ex parte hearings or that there's a reference to ex parte communications in the code, none of that is what ex parte communications are.
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
I just wanted to speak briefly about the ethics. Excuse me, Mr. Matthews. sounds like what he defined.
It goes farther
Yeah,
than that.
all right.
Thank you.
Pardon me. What I'd like to do is, again, talk about ethics and integrity. I think all of us up here, we do lead with ethics and integrity. It might be someone's perception because we don't agree with you that ethically we're not doing the right thing, but I do think we lead with ethics and integrity. And I think it also goes to saying, because there's a couple times I've brought up things about density, Yarrow Gardens, I'm going to say as one, and I've said, hey, you know, there's other places that we've not agreed upon because of density, if it be this one or the one that was over by Everett, and we always used the same reasoning. Oh, it's next to a school. Yarrow Gardens is next to a school. It's a little too dense. That's Yarrow Gardens. But again, what I know several council members said is, well, we can't look at these all blanket and call it all the same. That, and every council member has said this, and have said we need to do it on a case-by-case basis. And I think in this case, same with looking at if a council member should vote or not, it's a case-by-case basis. And I think we just had a perfect example of, in one case, it made perfect sense for a council member not to vote, and in another case it did with Dean Goki years ago. It's not something that's unheard of. So again, I think that we like to throw that word around, ethics and integrity, but I think what we also need to do is look from within, because I also think bullying council members, you know, before meetings and that type of thing is also not acceptable, and I've seen that as well if we're going to start spouting integrity and ethics. So I just think it's we can't talk out of both sides of our mouth.
Thank you, Ms. Weaver.
I'm not going to speak to the fact that I haven't been able to make the decision about whether I can make a decision. That is what we've been discussing. I would like to take a moment to talk about Planning Commission. Because for a moment, I'd like you to hear this not from me, but what your Planning Commission does. And your Planning Commission passed this for suggestion to be passed by City Council. The Planning Commission is made up, it was an 8-0 vote, and it's made up of 2 members from each district, each which are appointed by City Council members from that district. And so I'd like to get back to the issue that is at hand, and remember that the Planning Commission heard this case as well and unanimously said to City Council, we think this is something you should consider. And so I guess I would like us to remember that there's another part of hearings that starts with the city planning process. I guess that's all I'd like to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Additional discussion on the motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Urban.
To kind of circle back to the issue at hand, I'm not going to get into the items that have previously been discussed, but I'd rather look at the motion in front of us. And I will say, just very briefly, what I perceive to be the conflict here is somewhat of a fault line within Wheat Ridge, and that Upham Street, as it stands, is in some ways a fault line because it does abut both commercial and residential. And when we have that kind of conflict zone, that friction, that's where I think a lot of this is coming from as it relates to the issues that have come up, the passion that's been brought by both sides. And so when I'm looking at the comprehensive plan And I've been told that the comprehensive plan, you can't look at it parcel by parcel, but as a council member, we are a binary body in that we are either a 1 or a 0, either a yes or a no. And so when I'm looking at this particular project and this particular proposal that's been presented, and I bring out the comprehensive plan and I look at the difference between what is known as a neighborhood, which the comprehensive plan defines neighborhoods will be places for people to own homes and thrive, and where residents of all ages can live safely and comfortably. Most neighborhoods contain a school or park focus. Some have a semi-rural feel. Most have a general bounded by major arterial and collector streets. Planning and zoning will determine the appropriate mix of single-family or multifamily uses within these places in the future. Established neighborhoods. The city will continue to work with neighborhoods to focus on improving stability, homeownership, property values, protecting significant views, and provide high-quality infill in established neighborhoods. Established neighborhoods can be defined by the following criteria: consistent character, i.e. predominantly with single-family with some high-quality multifamily that fits with the neighborhood, mature landscaping, high rates of reinvestment in homeownership, property values have increased, consistent maintenance, high desirability. And neighborhoods continues on discussing about revitalization. I'm not going to get into that, but then if we look at the next item, which is neighborhood buffer, which this particular area is not a neighborhood buffer area. The neighborhood buffer area are generally located at the edges of neighborhoods and generally function as a buffer between low intensity residential areas and higher intensity commercial corridors and uses. Because of their close proximity to the city's primary commercial corridors, potential for assemblage, and underutilized nature of many of these properties, these areas will continue to transition from a mix of residential, both single and multifamily, and small-scale commercial uses traditional to areas with higher intensity residential, office, and commercial uses. Over time, the city aims to improve the appearance, mix of uses, property values, and overall vitality of these areas. Most neighborhood buffer areas correspond with the designated urban renewal areas and will develop in accordance with the adopted urban renewal plans. And I get that it's a matter of opinion, and that's why we are voting on this. I had an individual ask me in general, not on this case, but in general about the zoning process, and they said, well, if someone's gone through the process, shouldn't they be approved? And that's why we vote on this, to apply our knowledge of the comprehensive plan, our knowledge of the code of laws, and our ability to ascertain whether a particular project fits within that or not. And in my opinion, it is a somewhat of a close call, because it is in an area that, in my mind, is that sort of conflict zone between the commercial and the residential. One of my main concerns relative to the PRD is that it does seem to circumvent the intent and spirit of 26, and so that's a concern for me. But the overarching issue for me is that, similar to the domino analogy, is that once this is approved, that allows other properties directly adjacent to this property to also see multifamily residential development happen in that as well. And so as we go forward, looking at this, if we're going to look at the comprehensive plan and identify the neighborhood versus a neighborhood buffer, if those are two different categories as defined in the neighborhood plan, then we need to treat them like two different categories. And if this was in the neighborhood buffer area, I would see that that would be a good place to have this. And in my opinion, it isn't in that area. And so that's why I'll be voting no on this particular project. And I think that it looks like a high-quality project, and I'm not disparaging the developer by being against it, but I think that as we go forward in time, we need to be cognizant that the comprehensive plan, while we're told not to look at it on a parcel-by-parcel basis, we as council members have to make that decision. And when I'm making this decision, I'll be voting no.
Thank you. Mr. Pond.
Thank you. I'm going to continue to support it, and I just wanted to kind of react to a couple of the things that have been said. And just to reiterate, because it's now a few weeks since we've had some of this discussion, You talk a little bit about fault lines and conflict zones, and I understand the meaning of that. I don't know that it needs to be, or my reading of it as negatively sounding as that. I think there's a lot of edges and areas within our actual city on a parcel basis, but also in our zoning ordinances and the desire of the market as it builds out against our plans that are not kind of perfectly drawn, perfectly conceived, and it's kind of an evolution. I believe, though, in saying that our documents, our guiding documents, our processes, which we've been discussing and in some ways have been under attack, and our other guidelines, architectural site guidelines, other things that we've put in place over several years, I think actually have really been a response to a lot of the things we've heard in the last few weeks. For transparency, for clarity, for process, for repetition, and to try to do these things in the face of the fact that nothing's the same. It's not really repetitious. It's actually everything's a little bit different. Everything's has its own piece. I think we do the best we can. I think our staff does the best we can. I think we can certainly do better, and that's some of the things that we've been talking about over the last few weeks, including our retreat on some of those things. I think that's responsive to some of the comments tonight. But more importantly, I just think responsive to this project that took a zoning tool and used it to communicate, used it to evolve a plan, to work with neighbors, neighborhood, staff, and really try to do all of that. Still yet, not everyone agrees, and that's fair enough because it's not clear. There are gray areas. Fair enough. But I think it was compelling to me. It's a project that I think fits the area. That's my opinion as I look at those guidelines and as I look at this. I think it's good for the city, the direction we're going. And yes, does it create, the necessity for us to sit up here and do this again? Yes, it does. And that's what we should be doing.
Thank you. Is there additional discussion on the motion? Mr. Matthews.
Thank you. Along the lines of what Mr. Urban was just discussing, part of why we're here is to represent the people. And what he was talking about is, let me make a reference here. I think one of the biggest mistakes the judiciary made in our country several years ago is jump on the bandwagon of mandatory sentencing. I think that was a huge mistake because we have judges, we have juries, and we have counsel people in order to not just do things by the numbers. When we decide that we need to just do things by the numbers, we abdicate our responsibility to make decisions, and we also lose the ability to make judgment calls, which is why we're all here tonight. In the future, I'll be bringing up some kind of request to go over our zoning and try to get away from doing things by the numbers. I think that's what one of the people that spoke tonight was talking about with administrative subdivisions. It just goes by the numbers, and I think that's a huge mistake. One of the best pieces of advice I was given when I first got elected to this seat was you can't hardly go wrong most of the time if you vote with the people. And that's really why we're here, is to vote with the people. And I hope that we can all, I'm sure we all agree with that in principle, but sometimes I think we forget, because we all have, including myself, preferences and viewpoints. And that's probably one of the places where that keeps me awake the most at night, is trying to discern how do I best vote with the people. And I hope we can all consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Mr. Urban. Please ask him.
On this particular project, given the project is using an off-site drainage relative to this, is the use of that off-site drainage extend the site of this project to the school grounds, or is that considered not a part of the site?
It's an interesting question. And it's possible that Lauren will have a thought on that, but I guess my take would be it's common to have off-site facilities that are required to be built or needed for a project. Accel, decel lanes, for example, on the public right-of-way to service a project aren't part of the site and aren't part of what gets applied for. They're required, to say yes to the project. I don't see off-site drainage as any different than that. That's a public improvement that's necessary to service the site for wastewater, just as off-site Accel, decel lanes, traffic signal, for example, not on the site at all. They don't own it. They don't apply for approval on it, but a condition of their approval on their property is that happened. In this case, I agree, it's not on the same kind of public property as, say, an Accel, decel lane would be, but I think that distinction does not make a difference for the purpose of the question you ask.
And I guess it may be too late on this particular issue, but one of my main concerns that this case brought up is that by including the school property in that drainage project, it does affect the adjacent neighbors to the east of the school property, and they have no knowledge that this is going on except for people talking in the neighborhood, what have you. And so I would like, as we go forward, to consider that any kind of project of this nature where there is an adjacent property being used to meet the criteria that we're setting forth, that be included in the notice requirement, and then the 600 feet would extend from that property, because in my mind it feels like if that drainage project isn't done properly, those adjacent neighbors will be impacted by that in one way or the other. So,
fair enough. That I agree with you that it's a drafting project for another day, and when we would do that drafting, we'd have to be mindful of the fact that throughout the city there are regional detention and drainage facilities that are plugged into by projects sometimes a mile away, and use that system of infrastructure. Sometimes we're required to improve the infrastructure over here a mile away from in order to accept that additional drainage. So that would materially change the notice requirements. Not that you couldn't do that, but it's a somewhat larger question than just a drainage which is adjacent. But fair enough, fair question.
thank you.
Yep.
And just one last thing, I think that if Dean Goki knew that his name was being used here, I can't tell whether he'd be smiling down or frowning, but I can say that I think that it's nice that we continue to remember those council members that have served us and have gone on to the dais in the sky.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council? The clerk is going to clear the screen and we'll vote again.
All right, now you can vote. Push hard, Christy. Motion carries 6-2 with council members Matthews and Urban voting no.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, would you please provide a motion for item number 6, please?
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's see. I move to approve resolution number 19-2019, a resolution approving a specific development plan for property located at 4000 to 4066 Upham Street for the following reasons. The City Council has conducted a proper public hearing for the hearing that meets all public notice requirements as required by Section 26-109 of the Code of Laws, that the proposed specific development plan has been reviewed by the Planning Commission, which has forwarded its recommendations of approval. All requirements of a specific development plan have been met.
Thank you. Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Do we have discussion on the motion for item number 6? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Hope I cleared it. Motion carries 6-2 with council members Matthews and Urban voting no. Did I clear it properly? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, would you please provide us a motion with item number 7?
Thank you. I move to approve resolution number 20-2019. Is this the right one? I'm on 7, right? Hold on. It sounded just like exactly the same, but okay. I move to approve resolution number 20-2019, a resolution approving a major subdivision for property located at 4000 to 4066 Upland Street for the following reasons. 1, City Council has conducted a proper public hearing that meets all public notice requirements as required by Section 26-109 and 26-407 of the Code of Laws. 2, the requested subdivision has been reviewed by the Planning Commission, which has forwarded its recommendation of approval. 3, the subdivision plat has been found in compliance with Article 4 of Chapter 26 of the Code of Laws. 4, all agencies can provide services to the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense, and with the following conditions. 1, Note 4 shall be updated prior to the recordation to indicate the zoning as PRD. 2, the applicant shall continue to coordinate utility services with the appropriate agencies, and updated information regarding dry utility easements shall be reflected on the plat at recordation. 3, the developer shall enter into subdivision improvement agreement prior to recordation of the subdivision plat. 4, the developer shall pay park fees at the time of plat recording in the amount of $89,907.86. 5, the homeowners association covenants and/or metropolitan district service plan shall be reviewed by staff prior to issuance of a building permit. And 6, prior to recordation, the applicant shall enter into a formal agreement with Jefferson County Public Schools as required by the city.
Before I ask for a second, would you please clarify the dollar amount in condition number 4?
Oh, sure. Did I say it wrong? 89,009, or, yeah.
I've got 84,000.
Oh, sorry. Geez, these are new glasses even. $84,907.86.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on item number 7. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 6-2 with council members Matthews and Urban voting no.
Thank you. We will move to agenda item number 8. Mr. Keeter, will you please introduce agenda item number 8?
To 8 or 8 and 9? Just 8 and 9 together, or just 8?
8 and 9 together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 8, Council Bill number 06, 2019, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 3300 Ames Street from residential 3R3 to planned residential development, PRD, with an outline development plan, ODP, case number WZ-18-25/Feaster. At issue, the applicant is requesting approval of a zone change from residential 3 to planned residential development with an outline development plan for property located at 3300 Ames Street, the northeast corner of West 33rd Avenue and Ames Street. The purpose of this request is to prepare the property for the development of 2 duplexes. Item number 9, resolution number 30-2019, a resolution approving a specific development plan, SDP, for property located at 3300 Ames Street, case number WZ-18-26/Feaster. At issue, the applicant is requesting approval of a specific development plan for property located at 3300 Ames Street. Approval of an SDP is the second step in the city's approval process for a planned residential development. It provides site plan and design details for the subject property.
Thank you. Item number 8 is a ordinance on second reading. It is quasi-judicial public hearing. Does the clerk have an ordinance number for this ordinance?
I do. It's ordinance number 1668.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing. And Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do. Mr. Scott Cutler. Swear the witness.
Please proceed.
Mr. Mayor, you're going to swear on this one, swear
Oh,
the
yes, excuse me. If you, this is a quasi-judicial, and if you intend to make testimony on this item, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the matter as you understand it? Please say, "I do," if you do. Thank you. You may be seated.
All right, I'll get started. I am Scott Cutler. I'm a planner with the Community Development Department, and we're here tonight to hear case number WZ-1825 and WZ-1826, which was a request for approval of a zone change from residential 3 to a planned residential development with an outline development plan and approval of a specific development plan. I'd like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the zoning ordinance, the comprehensive plan, and this digital presentation. The properties within the city of Wheat Ridge, all appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met, and therefore City Council has jurisdiction to hear the case. To introduce you to the property, this is a 2018 aerial view on the screen. The property is outlined in red. It's about 4/10 of an acre. It's currently vacant, and it's half a block west of Sheridan Boulevard. Surrounding area is a mix of uses. There's 3-story multifamily apartment building to the north, an assisted living facility to the east, and small lot single-family homes to the west and south. Current zoning, the site is currently zoned residential 3, as are the properties to the north, south, and southwest. And R3 allows for single, 2-family, and multifamily development. The R1C zoning to the west and south allows for small lot single-family, and neighborhood commercial is the zone in pink on the screen, and that allows for light commercial uses, including the current use as an assisted living facility. So the plan development process, the applicant is proposing to develop the site with 2 duplexes for a total of 4 units, and the request tonight includes 2 components. The rezone from R3 to planned residential development is first, and the outline development plan, which is in your staff report, the Planning Commission staff report, accompanies the zone change request by establishing the zoning and development standards for the site. And then the specific development plan provides more detail regarding site design, landscaping, building elevations, things like that. It has to be compliant with the ODP, and it may be reviewed concurrently as we're seeing tonight. And there's also a subdivision that will be required as part of this process. Planning Commission will review that subdivision at a later date because it's a minor subdivision. This is just one photo of the site. It's, like I said, currently vacant. This is looking northeast on Ames Street, so you can see the neighboring apartment building just to the north, and then the assisted living facility to the east. This is the proposed site plan from the SDP, so it shows the location of the proposed duplex buildings, detached garages, driveways, water quality tract, and yards. And I'll go into that in just a minute. The permitted uses for the site, as part of the zone change, the applicant has proposed duplexes and single family to be the allowed primary uses, with customary accessory uses such as household pets and home occupations. This differs from R3 because R3 also allows townhomes and multifamily apartment buildings. The minimum lot size proposed is 8,425 square feet, and both lots shown here on the screen are proposed to be approximately 8,450 square feet. The proposed lot widths are 56 feet with a proposed minimum of 53 feet, and there's approximately a 12-foot water quality tract at the north end of the site. And then landscaping, the applicant has proposed increased landscape requirements at 40% of the site, up from the code required at 25% for developments of this type. And a landscape plan was attached in the staff report as part of the SDP document. The site plan shows in detail the configuration of the site. Like I said, the two buildings also have private 2-car garages for each unit, so a total of 8 on-site parking spaces. And both streets, 33rd Avenue and Ames Street, allow for on-street parking on both sides. The developer will also be building 5-foot attached sidewalks on both frontages as part of this project. And there's the water quality area at the north of the site. That will be between the northern duplex and the apartment building to the north. Each duplex is proposed to have private fenced yards with a concrete pathway to access the garage. And each driveway can be accessed through all those residents with a cross-access easement. And each unit will also have a front porch. These are the proposed elevations for the site. The applicant is proposing a maximum building height of 29 feet, which is lower than the citywide maximum for the R3 zone district of 35 feet, which would effectively limit the site to 2-story construction. The actual duplex buildings are proposed to be 26 feet tall, as you can see here, and they're 2 stories. For architecture, the city does not have design standards for duplexes. If you had a lot that you could build a duplex on, we wouldn't review the architecture. If you meet the code requirements, you could get approved. But in this case, the applicant has self-imposed some architectural standards for the site. Each unit will have a front porch, additional windows in the front and back, and then vertical board and batten siding is proposed with asphalt shingles. This is a side view of the site. Similar materials, they proposed a variation of the direction of the siding, and have proposed several side windows on the buildings. The garages are proposed to match. So, why a planned development? The PRD zoning is being requested because if the R3 zoning was used, the applicant would need to apply for both lot size and lot width variances to build their 2 duplexes, and that could be better accommodated with a custom zoning document. Under the current zoning, the R3 with the current lot arrangement, or lot width, lot size, would allow 5 attached townhomes, so a total of 5 units. The applicant is actually proposing to reduce the total amount to 4 units, but would require a planned development in order to facilitate that type of development. Otherwise, there would be multiple variances on the site. And they provided reasoning in their letter why they're pursuing 2 duplexes as opposed to 4 to 5 townhomes. So the planned development removes the need for variances, sets stricter standards for height, design, landscaping, and then limits the allowed uses to duplex and single family only. The process, as a requirement of the zone change process, a neighborhood meeting was held on November 8th at City Hall. There were 2 attendees from the neighborhood, and those notes are included in the staff report. Wheat Ridge is not a full-service city, so we did send the application on referral to outside agencies, fire, water, sanitation, Excel, and completed an internal review, and we did not have any concerns or objections from those agencies. There was a 15-day public noticing period before each hearing. We did receive 1 phone call supportive of the project during the Planning Commission hearing, and then 1 person spoke in favor of the project at Planning Commission. We haven't received any additional comments since. This is an overview of the comprehensive plan. So in this area, we use the comprehensive plan, as we just on the previous case, to talk about zone change requests. And this site is actually within the neighborhood buffer zone. That's kind of parallel to Sheridan, between Ames and Sheridan, on the whole east side of the city. So we find that the property is in the neighborhood buffer area. It specifically calls for improvement of underutilized properties, including a mix of residential uses, both multifamily and single family. And we believe this project complies with those goals, including the stated goals of increasing options for home ownership. This project will act as a transition from the higher intensity Sheridan corridor to the lower intensity uses to the west and the south. Staff believes the zone change request meets the criteria. It allows for a compatible and transitional land use. It complies with the comprehensive plan, and it provides opportunity for reinvestment on a vacant lot. This area has long included a mix of housing types, and this project will only add to the diversity of the area. The SDP also meets the criteria for review. The SDP complies with the purpose of a planned development, is consistent with the outline development plan. There's adequate infrastructure to serve the property, and again, it exceeds applicable code standards for landscaping, site design, and architecture. Because of all of this, staff is recommending approval of both requests. This time, that concludes my presentation. The applicant is here if you have questions for them, and I'm happy to answer your questions as well.
Thank you very much. Would the applicant like to speak, or just take questions if they come up?
You want to come up and speak? He's available for questions.
Okay, we'll see if there's any questions. The applicant is the only person that I have signed up to speak on this. Is there anyone else who is here who is not signed up to speak who would like to speak at this time? You may come forward. I don't see any, so at this time I will open this up for questions of staff or the applicant from council. Are there questions of staff or the applicant? Before I close the public hearing, any more questions? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, and Mr. Keeter, a motion is in order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve Council Bill number 06-2019, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 3300 Ames Street from Residential 3, R3 to Planned Residential Development, PRD, with approval of an outline development plan on second reading, and then it takes effect 15 days after final publication for the following reasons. Number one, the Planning Commission has recommended approval of the rezoning after conducting a proper public hearing. Number two, the proposed rezoning has been reviewed by the Community Development Department, which has forwarded its recommendations of approval. And number three, the proposed rezoning has been found to comply with the criteria for review in Section 26-603 of the Code of Laws.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion?
Thank you.
Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Oh, shoot.
Okay,
Vote.
I guess we need to vote again, is that?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
please
I
vote
guess
again.
I didn't clear it. Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. That concludes item number 8. Mr. Keeter, would you please provide us a motion for item number 9?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 30-2019, a resolution approving a specific development plan for property located at 3300 Ames Street for the following reasons. Number one, City Council has conducted a proper public hearing that meets all public notice requirements as required by Section 26-109 of the Code of Laws. Number two, the proposed specific development plan has been reviewed by the Planning Commission, which has forwarded its recommendation of approval. Number three, all requirements of a specific development plan have been met.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Beg your pardon?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Ms. Hoppy. Is there discussion on the motion? Are we ready to vote? Will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. That concludes agenda item number 9. Ms. Dozman, would you please introduce item number 10?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 07-2019, an ordinance removing the local historic landmark status from an accessory structure on property located at 11480 West 44th Avenue, case number WHL-19-01/McIntyre. So this is an ordinance on first reading, and the issue is that Section 26-913.A.3 is of the city code allows an application for removal of historic designation to be submitted at the request of a new owner, but only to the extent public financial assistance has not been received to benefit the exterior historic elements of the property. And this structure is located at 11480 West 44th Avenue in the Agricultural 1 Zone District, and the current owner purchased the property in 2013.
Thank you. This is an ordinance for first reading. Ms. Dozman, would you please give me a motion?
I move to approve Council Bill number 07-2019, an ordinance approving the removal of local historic status for an accessory structure at 11480 West 44th Avenue on property zoned Agricultural 1A1 on first reading for the sole purpose of ordering it published for a public hearing set for Monday, June 10th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers, and if adopted, that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Would the clerk please poll the council? You may need to clear the board.
Christie, did you second that?
Yes.
Ms. Davis is the second.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. That concludes the agenda items on our calendar for tonight. I would like to go now to city managers matters. Mr. Goff.
Yeah, just a couple quick items. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reminder for the public, there is a public open house on May 22nd for the Wadsworth Boulevard Widening Environmental Assessment. And that's here at Wheat Ridge City Hall from 5 to 8 p.m. again on May 22nd. And some good news on Anderson Park redevelopment, one of our 2E bond projects. The pool is going to be opened on Saturday, May 25th. That is Memorial Weekend. Believe it or not, it's Memorial Weekend already. Pool's got new locker rooms, restrooms, new pool house. It's a beautiful building. It's going to be great. Really proud of the work that staff has done on that. And then the park itself, the grand opening is scheduled for Saturday, June 22nd. So we're hoping it's all going to be ready for that. We had some late spring snow that kind of caused a little slowdowns, but most of the park should be ready by June 22nd.
Thank you very much. City Attorney's matters, Mr. Dahl.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Thank you very much. We will go to elected officials matters. Start with Mr. Keeter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, on last Friday, the Active Transportation Advisory Team held another Ride for Reading where close to a dozen riders delivered so many books to students at Pennington Elementary delivered them all by bicycles, and the kids are always really excited to see everybody come circling in and riding around them. And so I'd just like to commend everybody that participated, but particularly Scott DeYoung, who is the driving force locally for that particular event.
Thank you. I had hoped to be there, but I wasn't able to make it, but thank you. A great program. Mr. Matthews, anything tonight? Thank you. Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank the Wheat Ridge Chamber of Commerce for hosting a meeting at the Grange last week regarding the Wadsworth Widening project, and it was very well attended. We had various speakers, both from the city, from CDOT, and an attorney to discuss the various goings-on with the project, as well as educating people about the process that we're in. And it's very important that folks participate in that public meeting on May 22nd and submit your comments to the city if you have any. And to Mr. Goff's update about Anderson Park, my kids and I were driving past Anderson Park and we saw the sod being driven in. It was a huge flatbed truck full of sod, so it's definitely moving. So that's all.
I bet you wanted to get out there and help lay it. Ms. Dozeman.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to thank the ADATs for coming out to Peak Expeditionary on Friday. The kids really enjoyed that, and it's a great program, so my son was really excited. I also have a couple other things. I wanted to let everybody know that the Heroes for Hope race, it's a 5K, 10K race that the Lutheran Medical Center and Lutheran Foundation are going to be hosting on June 1st. Registration is now open, so you can sign up for that if you so wish. I will be running, so come join me. I probably won't run most of it, but we'll see. Also, on the dais tonight, we have our TLC neighborhood meeting, so District 4. It's going to be Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at the Clear Creek Baptist Church, and that's at 10555 West 44th Avenue. And so the Wheat Ridge Police Department will meet with residents to discuss traffic safety, life quality, and crime reduction. And then we also have a TLC cleanup day for District 4, which is going to be Saturday, June 1st. So much going on the exact same days. So it's going to be 8 a.m. to noon or until the dumpster is full. So come bring your trash items on June 1st. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Weaver.
I just wanted to report on let's see if I'm saying it right, the Jefferson County Senior Heroes celebration that happened last week. It was amazingly fantastic, and the Senior Resource Center, of course, was one of the big sponsors of that. and it was just incredible. Wow. People doing amazing things.
What more can you say than wow?
Yeah, yeah, I was blown
Thank you.
away. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ms. Davis?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hobby?
I have a few items that I'll see if maybe another council member will support me for putting on the agenda for a study session. But we had a speaker tonight during Citizens' Right to speak about potentially looking at an ordinance on vaping. And I would like to maybe study that and see if that's something that we could look at for our community, if anyone would like to support me on that.
I will do that.
Amanda Weaver and the mayor, thank you. My next thing is we had another speaker speak about how when we have a protest on a property, a legal protest, that that would trigger a 1-week continuance. And I would like to spend a little more time talking about that, in that it then gives an even playing field for all sides, for everybody to have an opportunity to be heard. So if anyone would like to support me on that, Mr. Keeter, thank you. And then I needed to ask, Troy Cipher was in here talking about Harlan Street, and so I want to ask staff, is there something we can do about that without having to take official city council action to look at it, or do we need to take official city council action to look at it?
No, I gave Mr. Cipher the thumbs up. We'll look at that right away.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Pond?
Our wonderful Mayor Pro Tem ticked off a couple of the items that I had, so thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Let's call stealing thunder, because it was on my list also, but I'm glad that we were able to move those things forward to a study session. Last Saturday night, I was very pleased to attend a STEM gala that Wheat Ridge High School held in Arvada. Had a great evening, and I want to congratulate the students and faculty and supporters who make the STEM program at Wheat Ridge High School work. It's a fantastic program, has great results. We're teaching not only the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, but we're teaching cooperation between those students, and we're teaching leadership for leaders in our community, and I want to thank them for their efforts on that. And once again, May 22nd, right here in council chambers, we will have the Wadsworth, a discussion on the Wadsworth widening. I want to thank the Wheat Ridge Chamber of Commerce for holding a meeting last week that was well attended. I was there also. And I hope everyone will either come to that meeting or send comments on that also, so we can get more input. Ms. Dozeman.
Yeah, sorry. One more thing. This last Saturday, Stevens Elementary held the first annual phase, which stands for Foundation for Advanced STEM Education, race amongst several elementary schools. There were 8 elementary schools, 3 from Wheat Ridge, including Prospect Valley Elementary, Stevens Elementary, and Peak Expeditionary at Pennington. And each team built their own hydro fuel cell car at their elementary school, and then they all competed and raced their vehicles that they built. And it was pretty amazing. So we had a really good time participating in that and seeing all of the awesome creations that the students made.
Thank you very much. If there is no more business to come before the council, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.